When we speak of Vedic astrology, we are not just discussing planets and predictions, we are uncovering the soul's map. And among all indicators in the chart, one stands out as the most intimate companion of the soul. That is the Atmakaraka. The word Atmakaraka comes from two Sanskrit roots, Atma, meaning soul, and Karaka, meaning significator. So quite literally, Atmakaraka is the significator of the soul. It is the planet that carries your deepest karmic imprint. The one that reveals the journey your soul has chosen for this lifetime, not the surface story, but the inner curriculum your spirit has signed up for. Now, this is not about good or bad, success or failure. The Atmakaraka tells us about your unique spiritual lesson. It shows what your soul is trying to evolve through, what it has not yet mastered in previous lives, and what it must now embrace. That's why the planet which becomes your Atmakaraka often feels intense, personal, and inescapable. It marks your growth hedge. Some people find that their Atmakaraka brings both strength and suffering. And that is not a contradiction. Because this planet doesn't always give what is comfortable. It gives what is necessary for your soul's unfolding. The house it sits in, the sign it occupies, and the planets it interacts with, they all add layers to this journey. So when we speak about the Atmakaraka, we are not just analyzing a planet. We are listening to the soul's voice. We are decoding the karmic DNA. And in this decoding lies tremendous clarity about our inner compulsions, about what keeps repeating in life, and about what we are truly here to learn, transform, and offer. Understanding your Atmakaraka is not just an astrological exercise. It is an invitation to live with greater awareness, to respond rather than react, and to align your outer actions with your inner evolution. Because at the end of the day, astrology is not just about prediction. It is about alignment. And the Atmakaraka is where that alignment begins, with the soul, with karma, and with the quiet wisdom that lies within. In Jaimini's system of astrology, the Atmakaraka is considered the most personal of the Charakarkas, the moving significators that change based on degrees. The Jaimini Sutras begin almost immediately by emphasizing its importance. In the very first chapter, it is stated, Svajna Tatma Jnaya, which means, the soul should be known through its own significator. Here, Jaimini refers to the planet holding the highest degree in your birth chart, not by strength or dignity, but by proximity to completion within its sign. This planet, regardless of whether it is benefic or malefic, becomes the Atmakaraka, the one carrying your soul's karmic agenda. While Parasara's system doesn't use Charakarkas in the same way, both traditions agree that the soul's purpose cannot be seen through any one house or sign alone, it must be revealed through the subtle interplay of karmic significators. That is where the Atmakaraka becomes central. So even though it's one among many planetary markers, Jaimini gives it a special place. Because it answers not just what you are destined to experience, but why your soul chose it in the first place. The Atmakaraka plays a very special role in your birth chart. It shows the area of life where your soul is learning its most important lessons. This is the part of your journey that may not always be easy, but it's deeply meaningful. Often, the planet that becomes your Atmakaraka shows where you face the most challenges. It could be in your relationships, your career, your family, or even within your own thinking. But those challenges are not random. They are there to help you grow from the inside. In fact, if you look closely at your life, you may notice a pattern. Certain situations or types of people keep coming back. That's usually where the Atmakaraka is working. It brings those experiences again and again, until you understand what you need to learn from them. The house and sign where this planet sits in your chart show where your focus needs to be. It tells us what kind of experiences will shape your inner growth. And the planets connected to it, through aspect or placement, add more details to your soul's journey. When we understand the Atmakaraka's role clearly, we begin to see life with more awareness. We stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is life trying to teach me here? That shift brings peace and real maturity. Finding your Atmakaraka is actually very simple. Among all the planets from Sun to Saturn, just check which one holds the highest degree in your birth chart. That planet becomes your Atmakaraka. For example, if Saturn is at 28 degrees, and no other planet is beyond that, then Saturn is your Atmakaraka, no matter which sign or house it is in. Planets like Rahu and Ketu are not considered for this in the traditional method. You can find this easily using any good Vedic astrology software. Look for a table that shows the degrees of each planet, or check the Charakaraka section if it's available. Some apps and websites also directly label your Atmakaraka for you, so you don't have to calculate it manually. But remember, identifying it is only the first step. The deeper meaning comes from understanding what that planet represents and where it sits in your chart. That's where real guidance begins. When the sun becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul carries a deep hunger to understand its true identity and inner authority. This is the journey of learning how to shine from within, rather than depending on outside validation. The sun, by nature, represents self-expression, leadership, confidence, and fatherly energy. As the significator of the soul itself, it becomes both the guide and the test. The person is born with a natural tendency to take charge, to lead, or to hold responsibility, even if they don't always feel ready for it. At the core, the soul seeks to develop self-respect, clarity of purpose, and the courage to walk a path that aligns with its deeper truth. This placement pushes the person to answer big questions like, who am I, really, beyond titles and roles, and what is my dharma in this life? There is often an urge to be seen, heard, or recognized, but also an underlying fear of failure or being judged. This inner conflict between needing approval and standing firm in one's truth becomes the fertile ground for transformation. Life brings situations where the native must step up, sometimes too early, or in the absence of supportive figures. This can lead to a sense of isolation or pressure, but it's precisely in these moments that the soul learns resilience and dignity. The person may experience themes involving authority, father figures, public recognition, or questions of status. These are not just life events, they are mirrors to help the soul understand the right use of power, the cost of ego, and the beauty of humility. Emotionally, there may be a deep desire to feel important or respected, and when this doesn't happen, it can lead to self-doubt or prideful reactions. Internally, the person may struggle with rigidity, superiority, or needing to be right. But life keeps bringing them experiences that challenge the ego and soften the heart. Such a soul grows through learning to balance ambition with grace and control with compassion. Moments of failure, rejection, or being unseen often serve as turning points. These experiences are not punishments, they are invitations to lead not from the mind, but from the soul. To align with this path, the person must develop inner stillness and a strong moral compass. Practices like Surya Namaskar, mantra chanting for the sun, like the Gayatri mantra, offering water to the rising sun, and serving the father or father-like figures can help. But most importantly, living with truth, taking responsibility without arrogance, and letting the inner light guide the way. That is the real journey of the sun as Atmakaraka. When the moon takes the role of Atmakaraka, the soul is walking a path of emotional maturity, connection, and inner peace. The moon, by its nature, governs the mind, emotions, motherly care, and adaptability. As Atmakaraka, it brings a strong karmic focus on relationships, emotional needs, and the ability to nurture and be nurtured. The soul is learning how to remain emotionally steady, even when the world outside is constantly shifting. There is a deep inner longing for safety, belonging, and comfort. The native often comes into this life with a sensitive heart, and the soul craves emotional understanding, both from others and within the self. Early life or past karma may have left emotional wounds around caretaking, mother figures, or a feeling of being emotionally unsupported. This leads the soul into situations that trigger vulnerability, dependence, or emotional highs and lows, not as punishment, but as an invitation to develop inner stability. Karmically, the moon as Atmakaraka attracts life experiences where emotions become the center stage. Intense attachments, mood swings, caregiving roles, or situations where the person must balance their needs with others. These experiences shape the mind and teach valuable lessons about boundaries, compassion, and emotional intelligence. It's not uncommon for such people to feel emotionally overwhelmed or drained, especially if they haven't yet learned how to protect their inner space. Psychologically, there's a high level of empathy, a natural ability to sense others' moods, and a strong pull toward emotional bonding. But this same gift can also turn into emotional overdependence or insecurity, if not handled with awareness. The native may struggle with needing approval or avoiding conflict, just to keep peace in relationships. The mind becomes the battleground, and peace is the soul's prize. Life challenges may come in the form of emotional betrayals, family issues, or periods of loneliness. These serve to deepen the soul's ability to nurture itself. Over time, the person learns that emotional strength is not about suppressing feelings, but honoring them without being ruled by them. To grow in this journey, regular self-reflection, spending time near water bodies, keeping emotional journals, and engaging in practices like Chandra Namaskar or Moon Mantra Japa, like Om Chandraya Namah, can bring inner calm. Most importantly, giving care without losing the self, and learning to be a mother to your own emotions, this is where the moon as Atmakaraka truly begins to shine. When Mercury becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul embarks on a journey of communication, understanding, and mental refinement. Mercury naturally represents speech, intellect, learning, business, logic, and youthfulness. As the Atmakaraka, it carries the soul into experiences where it must learn to balance logic with wisdom and expression with truth. This life is often about developing clarity, not just in thought, but also in how one listens, speaks, and relates to others through words. At its core, the soul desires to master the art of healthy expression, how to speak truthfully without harm, how to listen with presence, and how to remain mentally flexible in a world full of opinions. Often, there is a karmic background involving miscommunication, manipulation, or misuse of speech. As a result, this lifetime brings the person into roles where communication becomes central, whether as a student, teacher, writer, negotiator, or advisor. Karmic lessons come through the use of intellect. Situations may arise where the person must choose between cleverness and sincerity, or between short-term gain and long-term truth. Life keeps testing how the native uses their voice, how they deal with duality, and whether they are able to stay mentally steady during complex or confusing circumstances. It's not rare for such individuals to face challenges involving decision-making, trust issues in communication, or even sibling-related conflicts, as Mercury also rules over that area. Psychologically, there's often a fast-moving mind, high curiosity, and the ability to think in multiple directions. But this also brings the tendency to overthink, become restless, or get caught in endless analysis. Emotionally, detachment can creep in, and relationships may feel more like mental games unless grounded in empathy and presence. The soul evolves when it learns to communicate from a place of clarity and care, when words become healing rather than strategic. Life events such as misunderstandings, betrayals in friendship, or professional setbacks often serve as a wake-up call to refine how the mind and speech are being used. To align with Mercury's path, regular journaling, mantra recitation like Om Buddhaya Namah, mindful speech, and study of spiritual texts can be deeply beneficial. Teaching others, mentoring youth, or simply becoming more conscious of everyday conversations also serve the soul's growth. When Mercury as Atmakaraka is honored, the person becomes not just intelligent, but wise, humble, and truly connected through words. When Venus takes the role of Atmakaraka, the soul comes into this life with a strong longing for connection, harmony, and beauty. Venus naturally governs love, relationships, pleasure, values, and artistic expression. As the Atmakaraka, it reflects a karmic desire to understand the deeper meaning of love, not just in romance, but in every form of giving and receiving. This path teaches how to love without attachment, how to enjoy without addiction, and how to value the self without external validation. At its core, the soul seeks balance, emotionally, materially, and spiritually. There's an inner pull toward companionship, but also a silent craving for peace and contentment. Often, this results in lives where relationships become central, whether romantic, social, or even through one's sense of aesthetics and surroundings. But love here is not always smooth. The person may go through heartbreaks, repeated attachments, or emotional confusion, not to punish the heart, but to purify it. Karmic patterns often revolve around attachment, desire, indulgence, and at times, misuse of charm or attraction. These patterns bring lessons about what is truly valuable. Is it outer beauty, or inner grace? Is it comfort, or truth? Life places the person in situations where they must choose between temporary satisfaction and long-term peace. Through this process, the soul is refined to appreciate deeper forms of joy, like devotion, compassion, and self-love. Psychologically, there's a natural softness, a love for art, beauty, and refinement. These individuals tend to be diplomatic, affectionate, and emotionally generous. But this same nature can lead to dependency in relationships, people-pleasing, or avoiding conflict just to maintain harmony. Emotional identity often becomes tied to how much they are loved, appreciated, or desired by others. The real growth begins when the person learns to love without losing themselves. Challenges like unbalanced partnerships, failed expectations, or the burden of always being pleasant are opportunities to reclaim personal truth. These moments gently break the illusion of ideal love and bring the soul closer to real love, rooted in awareness and respect. To walk this path well, spiritual practices that connect beauty with devotion are ideal. Bhakti yoga, mantra chanting for Venus like Om Shukriya Namah, music, or acts of service through art and kindness bring healing. Offering white flowers or sweets to the divine, or simply living with grace and fairness in relationships, helps align with Venus' higher vibration. When the soul integrates these lessons, Venus no longer remains just the planet of pleasure. It becomes the guide toward divine love and inner harmony. When Mars becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul enters this life with the mission of learning right action, courage, and self-control. Mars by nature represents energy, discipline, willpower, and the warrior spirit. As Atmakaraka, it sets the stage for a life where strength is tested, not only in the outer world but even more so within. The soul seeks to master the fire within, to channel it purposefully, rather than letting it burn everything in its path. At the heart of this journey lies a desire to understand how to use power wisely. The native may feel driven from a young age, full of ambition, competitiveness, or even restlessness. Whether it's sports, work, or personal struggles, life constantly demands action. But this intensity is not about aggression, it's a lesson in how to act with awareness. The person is often placed in situations where they must fight, for respect, boundaries, or even survival. But the real lesson is learning when to fight, and when to let go. Karmically, this placement brings issues around control, anger, impulsive behavior, and handling opposition. Past actions may have involved either misuse of power or suppression of courage, and now the soul is trying to strike that balance. Life keeps offering circumstances that awaken inner fire, whether through rivalry, authority clashes, or moments that test moral strength. These are the battlegrounds of the soul. Psychologically, Mars as Atmakaraka creates a sharp mind and a determined heart. The person often has a direct way of thinking and doesn't like to beat around the bush. But the challenge is to soften the edges, to act without becoming rigid, to lead without dominating. Emotionally, frustration builds up when results don't come quickly, or when others fail to match their intensity. This can lead to isolation, or feeling misunderstood by calmer personalities. The soul's growth comes when energy is directed toward higher goals, not just personal victory, but protection, service, and discipline. The real evolution begins when the native transforms raw passion into purposeful action. Situations that force patience, humility, or teamwork are often turning points in this journey. To balance this energy, practices like martial arts, disciplined yoga routines, Surya Namaskar, or Hanuman Chalisa recitation are deeply grounding. Offering service to those in need, especially in crisis situations, channels this warrior spirit into dharma. When Mars as Atmakaraka is honored with awareness, the person no longer fights just for ego. They fight for truth, justice, and the soul's deeper purpose. When Jupiter becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul takes on the journey of wisdom, guidance, and inner expansion. Jupiter is the natural karaka of knowledge, dharma, faith, children, and spiritual teachers. As the Atmakaraka, it brings a deep karmic calling to grow through truth, to lead with integrity, and to discover meaning beyond material success. This is the soul of a teacher, whether formally or through example. The core desire here is not just to learn, but to live wisely. The person may feel an inner pull toward philosophy, spiritual texts, or understanding the bigger picture of life. Even from a young age, there's often a mature attitude, a sense that they are being prepared for something more meaningful. But this wisdom doesn't always come easily. It is shaped through personal tests of faith, ethical dilemmas, or the burden of giving advice before one is ready. Karmically, Jupiter as Atmakaraka brings themes around belief systems, misuse of power in guidance roles, or arrogance in knowledge. In this life, the person is made to go through experiences that humble them, false gurus, broken trust in mentors, or situations that question their own beliefs. These challenges are designed not to shake faith, but to deepen it, to move from blind belief to real understanding. Emotionally, these individuals often carry a sense of responsibility, especially towards family, students, or those who look up to them. They may struggle with guilt when they don't live up to their own moral standards, or when they feel they've misled others. There's also a tendency to overgive, to become the advisor for everyone else, often forgetting their own needs in the process. But when aligned, Jupiter as Atmakaraka brings incredible grace. The person becomes a true source of guidance, not by preaching, but by living truthfully. They become mentors, teachers, wise friends, or even spiritual guides in their circles. And yet, their real growth happens not in how much they know, but in how deeply they trust the process of life. To support this journey, regular study of scriptures, satsang, acts of charity, and chanting Om Gurave Namah or Om Brihaspate Namah are powerful. Serving as a guide without attachment to outcome, and continuing to learn without ego, brings inner joy and fulfillment. When Jupiter is honored in this role, the soul becomes a light, not to dominate others, but to uplift. When Saturn takes the role of Atmakaraka, the soul has chosen a path of discipline, endurance, and deep karmic cleansing. Saturn is the natural karaka of duty, responsibility, delay, hard work, detachment, and karmic depths. As the Atmakaraka, it often signals that the soul is carrying weight from the past, and has now come to learn the value of time, humility, and inner maturity through life's slower, tougher lessons. At its core, the soul desires to become truly steady, to build a life that's not based on shortcuts, but on foundations that last. This journey is about mastering patience, facing discomfort, and accepting the limitations of life with grace. The person often feels that things take longer for them, whether it's success, love, or peace of mind. But this delay is not punishment. It is Saturn's silent way of building depth and character. Karmically, there may be past tendencies of avoidance, irresponsibility, or misuse of authority. In this life, the person is brought face to face with hard work, emotional isolation, or being the one who carries burdens for others. Repeated situations of rejection, failure, or loneliness often surface, not to break the person, but to awaken their strength, patience, and resilience from within. Psychologically, Saturn as Atmakaraka can bring self-doubt, fear of being unwanted, or feeling like life is a constant uphill climb. These individuals tend to mature early, often because they've had to grow up before their time. They may appear quiet or even withdrawn, but inside there is a silent wisdom forming, one that cannot be taught, only lived. The challenges are not small, but they are purposeful. Emotional wounds from neglect, lack of appreciation, or being misunderstood are part of Saturn's slow healing process. The soul evolves when it stops seeking approval and begins walking its path steadily, without looking for applause. Real confidence comes when the person accepts their journey, however long it takes. To support this path, simplicity and consistency are key. Daily routines, seva, selfless service, meditation on time and impermanence, and chanting Om Sham Shanicharaya Namah bring alignment. Serving the elderly, helping the underprivileged, or simply doing one's duties without complaint becomes powerful healing. When Saturn is embraced as the Atmakaraka, the soul becomes unshakable, slow to rise, but destined to endure and uplift others through example. When Rahu becomes the Atmakaraka in the Jaimini system, the soul is on an intense journey of transformation, worldly learning, and breaking old boundaries. Rahu represents desire, illusion, unconventional paths, and karmic hunger. As the Atmakaraka, it shows that the soul has chosen a bold path, one where it must engage with the material world deeply, face its shadows, and then rise above them with awareness. This is not an easy path, but it is a powerful one. The inner drive here is to master the unknown. The person may feel a constant urge to experience more success, more freedom, more knowledge, or even more recognition. But no matter how much they achieve, there often remains a feeling of not enough. This hunger is not just worldly. It is the soul's attempt to reclaim something it once misused or misunderstood. Through Rahu, the soul is trying to learn discernment, how to walk through illusion without becoming trapped by it. Karmically, this placement often suggests that the native had strong desires or ambitions in past lives that were left incomplete or misdirected. Now, life presents them with opportunities that look grand and promising, but not all of them are real. The challenge is to recognize which paths lead to true growth, and which are mere distractions. There can also be karmic entanglements involving fame, deception, or misuse of influence. Psychologically, Rahu as Atmakaraka makes the person magnetic, curious, and often drawn to taboo, foreign, or cutting-edge domains. They may feel like outsiders, never fully belonging, always exploring. This outsider feeling is part of their evolution. It teaches them to accept their uniqueness and find truth on their own terms. Emotionally, there may be anxiety, restlessness, or fear of being exposed. They often live in extremes before learning how to balance their inner and outer lives. The soul's biggest transformation comes when it stops chasing and starts integrating. Rahu doesn't want to destroy. It wants to awaken. When used with awareness, Rahu becomes the force that breaks illusions and pushes the person into higher intelligence. But it must be guided. Without grounding, Rahu can lead to obsession or spiritual confusion. To align with Rahu's energy, practices like meditation on the breath, shadow work, silence, and deep self-inquiry are key. Chanting Om Ram Rahave Namah or honoring Lord Bhairava helps in stabilizing Rahu's intensity. Seeking mentorship from wise guides and humbling oneself before true knowledge brings clarity. When Rahu is honored as Atmakaraka, the soul becomes a pathbreaker, walking uncharted roads, but ultimately returning home, wiser and whole. When Ketu becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul has already walked through many lifetimes of worldly experience and now seeks something far beyond it. Ketu, as the planet of detachment, moksha, past life mastery, and spiritual liberation, indicates a karmic path where the external world slowly fades in importance. The soul isn't here to build empires. It is here to dissolve illusions and return to what is eternal. At a soul level, there is a deep yearning for peace, stillness, and freedom from the noise of the world. These individuals often feel disconnected from society's typical goals. Fame, wealth, or relationships may not hold lasting meaning. Even when success comes, it feels hollow. The real hunger is for silence, truth, and inner clarity, often without knowing exactly what they are seeking. This desire is not escapism. It is the soul's memory of a time before identity and attachment. Karmically, Ketu as Atmakaraka suggests the person has already lived through strong attachments, indulgences, or ego-driven paths in past lives. Now, they are completing those cycles. Life may bring sudden losses, forced surrenders, or phases of extreme solitude. These aren't punishments, they are initiations. Through these experiences, the soul learns non-attachment and unconditional acceptance. It learns how to be in the world, but not of it. Psychologically, Ketu as AK can bring a feeling of being invisible, misunderstood, or emotionally absent. These people often struggle to define who they are, because their soul doesn't want to be defined. There may be vivid dreams, intuitive gifts, or spontaneous spiritual awakenings from an early age. But there can also be confusion, instability, or a sense of floating, as if life is happening in a mist. The real growth begins when the person stops trying to chase meaning and allows it to arise naturally. They must learn to trust the unseen, to let go without fear, and to honor their path even if no one else understands it. The ego may resist, but the soul is quietly shading its layers. Remedies are simple but sacred. Silent meditation, solitude in nature, observing fasts, visiting temples of Lord Ganesha or Dattatreya, and chanting Om Ketave Namah help tune into Ketu's frequency. Serving without recognition, and spending time in spiritual contemplation deepen the connection. When Ketu is honored as the Atmakaraka, the soul walks the most subtle but powerful path, not toward the world, but beyond it. When Ketu becomes the Atmakaraka, the soul has already walked through many lifetimes of worldly experience and now seeks something far beyond it. Ketu, as the planet of detachment, moksha, past life mastery, and spiritual liberation, indicates a karmic path where the external world slowly fades in importance. The soul isn't here to build empires. It is here to dissolve illusions and return to what is eternal. At a soul level, there is a deep yearning for peace, stillness, and freedom from the noise of the world. These individuals often feel disconnected from society's typical goals. Fame, wealth, or relationships may not hold lasting meaning. Even when success comes, it feels hollow. The real hunger is for silence, truth, and inner clarity, often without knowing exactly what they are seeking. This desire is not escapism. It is the soul's memory of a time before identity and attachment. Karmically, Ketu as Atmakaraka suggests the person has already lived through strong attachments, indulgences, or ego-driven paths in past lives. Now, they are completing those cycles. Life may bring sudden losses, forced surrenders, or phases of extreme solitude. These aren't punishments, they are initiations. Through these experiences, the soul learns non-attachment and unconditional acceptance. It learns how to be in the world, but not of it. Psychologically, Ketu as AK can bring a feeling of being invisible, misunderstood, or emotionally absent. These people often struggle to define who they are, because their soul doesn't want to be defined. There may be vivid dreams, intuitive gifts, or spontaneous spiritual awakenings from an early age. But there can also be confusion, instability, or a sense of floating, as if life is happening in a mist. The real growth begins when the person stops trying to chase meaning and allows it to arise naturally. They must learn to trust the unseen, to let go without fear, and to honor their path even if no one else understands it. The ego may resist, but the soul is quietly shading its layers. Remedies are simple but sacred. Silent meditation, solitude in nature, observing fasts, visiting temples of Lord Ganesha or Dattatreya, and chanting Om Ketave Namah help tune into Ketu's frequency. Serving without recognition and spending time in spiritual contemplation deepen the connection. When Ketu is honored as the Atmakaraka, the soul walks the most subtle but powerful path, not toward the world, but beyond it.